Cool. So I've got a very simple markdown file here. I can go ahead in my terminal. I'm going to run npm run build just to kind of show off what happens there. So now we have this new _site directory. Oh, look. Would someone like to reply in live event text so that they know they can join us? Cool. So I've got an _site directory, which has my built project here. It's got a hello directory with an index.html. So if we were serving this, or if this were being hosted anywhere, we could go to the /hello route, and we would see this awesome HTML file. So that's cool. We know that that's working. However, if we keep it like this, we're going to end up with a ton of markdown files in our root directory. And personally, I'm not about that life. I want to hide it away somewhere. For me, like, the root level is like pretty sacred, right? I want to keep like just the like root level configurations of the project in there. That's at least my own personal preference. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder here, and I'll call it source because that's pretty familiar for people. And then I think I'm going to, in here, I'm going to create a new folder called schedule. And so source is where we're going to want people to, or where we're going to want Eleventy to look for our markdown files. So I'll go ahead and move my hello into schedule for now. I'm going to nuke site. I'm going to do npm run build just so we can see that again. So now that I changed the directory structure here, you can see that like we've now got a source schedule hello, but that means that our users are, you know, they're going to like, if they navigate to our site, they're going to have to go to our site /source/schedule/hello. This isn't ideal. Very least, we shouldn't ever have them actually see the word source, right? They shouldn't need to know or care about our code base structure at all. So we're going to need to start doing some pretty like high level configuration of Eleventy here. And so to start that,
I'm so glad you're doing this because I was curious about the same exact thing, and I haven't actually like figured out how I wanted to do it yet. So I'm excited. I'm here for this.
Cool. So I'm back in my package JSON if you want to join me, because I real quickly need to make a change where instead of saying index.js, I'm going to go to .eleventy.js. And that's not a file that exists, so I'm going to go ahead and create this. I think you can call this whatever you want, but .eleventy.js is kind of the kind of agreed upon convention here. And inside here, I'm going to export a function. This function takes an argument that I typically call Eleventy configuration. I think some people just call it config, other people call it Eleventy. I call it Eleventy configuration. Unfortunately, because of the way Eleventy works, like this is just kind of its own like standalone file, and therefore it doesn't readily get access to like any of the types, and therefore you just kind of have to know that methods exist on this Eleventy configuration object. And for that, I repeatedly have to like make my way to the Eleventy docs. But we're not actually going to do anything with this configuration yet. We actually just want to return some configuration of our own. So I'm going to return an object. And inside this object, there needs to be a directory property. Now, how did I know it was a directory property? Well, I've read the Eleventy docs, and specifically what I'm trying to do, I usually have to, there we go. So I'm going to the configuration page. In fact, I'll go ahead and dump this in live event text for anyone who's curious. Yeah, so we have this page, and it tells us about like the configuration API. This is that Eleventy config that we're passing there. And you can see we're also returning this object here. Cool. So I want to configure the input directory. Basically, I want to tell Eleventy, hey, I know typically by default you look for markdown files in the root level of this project. I don't want you to do that though. I want you to look inside my source. And so that's the input directory. And it says that what you need is your module.exports needs to return an object that has a directory property, and that directory property is an object that has an input property.
Killer.
So, you what?
Oh, I just said that's killer. Love it.
Yeah. So I'm going to now say input. I'm going to say that this is /source/. So I'm there. I'm going to blow away the site build. I'm going to run it again. Now you can see that, like, hey, there, like it got rid of that source layer. Now it's starting with source. It's assuming that source is its like starting location, and it's maintaining source's internal directory structure. So that's how you get this like schedule and the hello and so forth. How are we feeling about this?
Good.
Cool.
Makes sense.
All right. And we have tons of other options too. Like, let's say, for instance, I don't want it to be called _site. Like, you know, I'm pretty used to the world where like our project exists at dist, for instance. I could add an output dist as well. And it's going to create a dist, and that's the same thing. So I just changed what output folder it goes to as well. So Eleventy is chock full of this kind of stuff, of like, sometimes things just happen by magic based on the default configuration, but basically anything in there is configurable so that you could replace it with your own thing. So today we might see a few like magic directories, things that just have to be named a certain thing. And the only reason they have to be named that is that's the default configuration, and just about any one of those configuration settings could be overridden. So that's what we got. I'm personally going to leave this as _site. If anyone has any strong opinions against that, feel free to let me know. But that's I'm just going to leave it for now. And I've added _site to my get ignore. Cool.
You're good at this streaming thing, Ben.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do I need to become a streamer? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pro streamer. You're there. This is great.
All right. So we, at this point, we now have our basic input configuration set up. To get any further, I kind of think we should have some just mock data. I'd love to have, you know, a few events documented in here. This doesn't need to be brilliant. It doesn't need to be amazing, but I'd like to have a few entries in here just so that we can play around with like how we actually want to filter through the data and display and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and delete my hello MD. And then in here, this is where we're going to put like every event that we ever do is going to have its own markdown file, would be my thought. And we can decide on some standards for this, if that's important to y'all. One of the things I had been tossing around was this idea of like starting with the date in year, month, day. So today is the 21st, right? Yes, it's the 21st. And then maybe we give this an extra name, so like afterwards. So it can be like Eleventy Community Calendar, not MD. That's a long name, but who knows? Maybe that's how we want to do this. Cool. And in here, you know, I could write a bunch of markdown. I'm going to add, though, what's called front matter. If you've not seen front matter before, this is just metadata about your document. Eleventy has, behind the scenes, it has something called the data cascade, which I don't understand super well. But basically, it is the, like, Eleventy aggregates data from a lot of different places in your application and exposes it to your layouts and to your templates, so that when you're actually like generating content, you can pull from that data, and you can pull from a ton of different places. And so if I have, an entry for like, or if I have a page for this markdown file, I can add extra like metadata about this in here. So some metadata that would be super, super helpful to have would be titles. So this would be like the name of the event that we're doing. So I'm going to call this building a community calendar with Eleventy. I can also add in a date. So I'm going to say that this happens on 21. And maybe we would add an hour timestamp as well, hours and minutes. That seems very likely. We can decide that down the road, I think. And maybe that's all we need for now. Yeah. And I'm just going to dump in some... Oh, are y'all having issues with the screen share? I'm sorry.
I think it's all right now. It goes in and out. I don't think it's anything. I don't think it's your fault at all. I'm able to follow along decently with the live share. Okay. So we can try to debug that some other time. But it kind of goes in and out. I don't know if maybe that's just like an upload speed thing or a setting that we have, but we can figure it out another time.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I was going to say, two things from me. I was going to say it has been definitely better from when I initially mentioned it.
Yep.
And that's like the debugging part. I was going to say, maybe it's like all of us are sharing video and doing this at the same time, and then like maybe that's taking away. So if it does continue, that's what I was going to say. Maybe that's one thing we could try. Cool. But like I said, right now it seems to be working pretty good.
Cool. Yeah. So. We've got some basic content here, and so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and kick off npm run dev. So now I have over here, I can actually pull up our site on 8080. Now we don't have anything at /. In fact, our thing exists at /schedule / I was playing around with this kind of thing earlier just to make sure I could get like a rough proof of concept together. But so 2020, 12, 21, 11D community calendar. That's a pretty long name. But I can go there and you can see like I've got my page. And I think if this is working right, anyone who's in the live share can also go to their 8080 and see the same stuff. And y'all can let me know if that's working.
This is so strange.
Were you able to hit the page on your 8080?
I'm not sure yet. I need to type in that whole URL, I think. What do you get at the root?
Oh, you shouldn't get anything at the root. The root isn't serving anything.
Okay.
I'll put this in the text as well, so that anyone who just needs a handy link to click can do that.
There it is. Yeah, Ben, I don't know if you saw in the chat. I briefly mentioned I'm not the most experienced with Eleventy, so I'm going cruise control with you. All my trust is in you. I'm just kind of picking up learning things every now and then. So I'm going along for the ride.
Please do feel free to ask questions as they come up. That's the point of I think something like this is not just building a thing, but like understanding a thing, right? So if you have questions, let me know.
This is absolute mayhem. I am indeed getting this at localhost 8080, which is
that's
weird.
Black magic here. I'm wow.
Yeah, much wow.
All right. Yeah. So at this point, I think what we should do is we should create a couple of markdown documents like this. I'm going to ask for audience participation here. Anyone who's in the live share, go ahead and create a few of these. Let's do them for some events that we know are coming up and some events that we've already had. So if you like React podcast live listens, perhaps, I'll put in the hijacking screen readers one.
Okay.
We can just put in a few of these things. That way we have some data to properly work with.
Yeah, I'll put one in on tomorrow. We're doing a kind of a UI challenge type thing as well. So I'll put that one in.
Oh, cool.
I'm the only one who knows about it at this point.
Yeah.
Now the only thing I'm having trouble with on this live share is there a way? I'm not seeing my typical sidebar with all of the files in there. I'm able to follow you, and I don't know if this is just because it's read-only.
I didn't set it to be read-only. I think there should be a pane that specifically... Actually, you've probably got a live share pane up where your directory structure would usually be, right?
I do, yeah.
I think if you go to the participants, it might say you're following me. In which case, right-click my name and I think stop following, because you should have write access.
Okay, so I've stopped following you. I do have the local 8080, which is cool. I don't see anything that allows me to see the directory structure, which is interesting.
Do you not have the usual directory structure sidebar icon?
Yeah, so if I have if I hit I usually toggle it with Command B.
Mm-hmm.
And so all I'm seeing right now is just so it says session detail, or it says live share, session details, participants. Actually, I can just post a screenshot of what I'm seeing.
Yeah, but I would
reading it.
Think, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I would think that if you're looking at my screen, this directory icon up here, I would think you would still have this, right? It would just, if your sidebar's over here, it would be over here, but you could still do that, I think, right?
Yeah, not in mine. So I wonder.
Weird.
Yeah,
I am getting the sidebar on mine.
Interesting.
If that helps at all.
Yeah, this is so strange. It could just be I need to restart it or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna try joining this thing again. I was gonna say, Ben, is your VS Code sidebar? Is it on the right side?
It is. I learned that from one of the Jason. There is an anonymous guest user who wants to join.
That is me.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
I am anonymous guest user.
All right.
Yeah, I'm super weird about combining my work Git with my personal Git, because I always screw things up. So I'm trying to do this the conservative route.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm gonna find the pitch I used for. Actually, no, it wouldn't have ended up here. This isn't going to be the best pitch, best description, whatever. But yeah, do we have anyone who's able to create files and stuff, and also include a few live listens and stuff like that?
I am. I don't. The only upcoming I see is yours. So if you give me a date and a name, I can add it.
How about Rob? What if you go ahead and add your event where you were going through Eleventy with Chan?
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Let me find out what.
And there's still,
because that's in the past.
Yeah, there's a description. If you go into news, I think, and scroll back just a little bit, you'll see an announcement for it. It might actually be the first post in news there, Rob.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I absolutely am not anticipating that this would be the world's best description or anything like that. I'm mostly doing this as a demonstration of here's a thing that we could do, etc.
Yeah, I think mine is read only, but that's not very surprising considering I'm a guest. So yeah. I'm just gonna try and logging in. I'm just gonna try again.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna close the bigger files. Chen, are you? Looks like we. Yeah, you're adding stuff. This is great. If you save this, can you rename this file that you're in so that it has the .md extension?
Oh, I apologize for that. Yeah.
Oh, you're totally fine, dude. Yeah, and that'll give you like the syntax highlight and stuff like that. Looks like we've got Michael. Hello, Michael. Welcome to the party.
Okay, I'm in. I'm no longer anonymous.
Oh. Well.
Okay. Mine's looking good. Sorry. I wanted to get that set up because if we can, especially like when we do this in the future, I want mine like fully set up so I can just jump in. But I think I'm good.
Ken, are you still having issues with seeing the directory structure?
Yeah, I kind of opted out real quick just because I couldn't see the directory structure, but I'm writing the text for tomorrow's event. So as soon as I get that finished, I can paste it in somewhere.
Cool.
It's weird. I suspect that if I just restarted this, it would probably let me do it. It's
That's
probably
totally fair.
just one of those like. Actually, I'm gonna do it right now just to see.
Hello world, Michael G is famous.
Yeah, I thought I'd throw my name in the hat.
Yeah,
Sure.
love it. Michael G was here.
Yeah. Basically, route to be deleted. It could be also be the name applied.
For sure. All right. How are y'all feeling about your? I guess yeah. Let's.
Boom! I've made my contribution to the world.
Excellent.
Don't forget to share,
So
like, and subscribe.
next thing I want to.
You need your SoundCloud so we can get your
Smash the like button.
Amazing. I just what I incredibly love is you can totally just like add a link though to this. So like we'll actually send people to Fantastic instead.
Oh,
Oh, he just
the identity fraud.
he just cut you hard. Okay, so it's so funny. I did restart. I turned it off and turned it back on again, and now I see the the source panel. So this is great.
Nice.
There we go.
Well, all right, cool. So the next thing that I wanted to show off is like if I inspect our page, we're going to see that basically this is completely, totally unremarkable. What's going on here? Like all of our HTML, like we have written some content, but it needs to have the trappings of the rest of the page, right? And so to do that, we're going to create layouts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into to source here. I'm going to create, and this is another magic directory name that you can completely override in your Eleventy.js, but I'm going to stick with the default name. In general, I try to stick with the default names as much as possible, just keep it easier for people who are going from Eleventy project to Eleventy project. But this magic name is _includes. The way you can think about includes is it's like creating a globals directory. So everything that's in there should be exposed basically to all of your HTML files that you're going to be creating. There are actually several different globals directories in Eleventy that all kind of have their own like recommended use case. Like includes tends to be for your layouts. There's an underscore data that tends to be for like the data that you don't want to like duplicate all over the code base, stuff like that. But yeah, these are all global files that we've got. So I'm creating this includes, and inside here I'm going to create another directory. The contents of our includes could be whatever we want, but I'm going to call it layout just because I think that's easier to follow. I think it makes it clear what the purpose of this is. And in here, I'm going to create a new file called event.html. When I'm in here, I'm going to go. I'm going to go ahead and initialize this with a default HTML template. And this is an HTML file, but it's an HTML file that allows for templating. By default, Eleventy uses liquid syntax for templating. So if you're familiar with like Jekyll, this is what that would be for, is you would be using the same syntax, I believe. You can also use nunjucks, there's handlebars, there's tons of others. You could use like JavaScript template strings if you wanted, although I think that tends to be slower than the other templating mechanisms. And you can even mix and match. So even though there's like a default, like you can basically use any of them whenever you want, which is kind of fun. Eleventy's like #1 opinion is that its opinions shouldn't get in the way of your opinions. So if you want to try like a different templating language, you totally can. I'm not going to configure anything else here. I'm just going to go ahead and continue using Liquid. Cool. So we got our general, I would call this a template, but that's not what Eleventy calls it. Eleventy calls it a layout. Template actually means something different. Template means our markdown files, weirdly enough. But it's serving as what we would conceptualize as a template, is the trappings of our page that we just mush content into. As an example of that, I'm going to go ahead and create, we're going to do some good old-fashioned semantic markup here. I'm going to create a main tag, and inside our main tag, we need an H1. And, well, now we have a problem of, like, what do we want to put in our H1? We could be manual about this, right? I could say hijacking screen readers with CSS, but then I'd have to like create a file like this for all of my events. That's kind of pointless, right? Like that's not why we're using a static site generator. So instead, I'm going to dynamically inject some information. I'm going to start my double handlebars here. I'm going to say title. What I want to draw your attention to, if this is your first time doing anything with this kind of data flow, is that this title here actually matches, if I go back into our markdown files, it matches this right here. I mentioned that Eleventy aggregates data from a lot of different places in a process known as the data cascade. And one way, one aspect of that data cascade is this section here, the front matter. So we're defining basically a variable called title that we can then consume in our layout here. So the next thing I'm going to do is we've got in here, we've got some lovely like markdown that we've been writing, right? Like, tons of great markdown. Y'all are doing a fantastic job. We want to consume that. That's also exposed in a similar way as the variable that we can use. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to say content. If you were familiar with Eleventy, you'll know that this isn't totally all we need to do. We need to do a little more, but I want to show off what it's going to end up doing. So I'm going to save this. So now we've got a lovely layout file. I want to go here and I want to tell my markdown file, hey, when you create a page based on this markdown file, I want you to use this layout that we've created. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to create a new property in our front matter called layout. This is a magic word here. I don't think you can reconfigure this. I think it has to be called layout. But that's fine because it's an easy to remember name. And here, I'm going to give this a string layouts/event.html. It knows what layouts is because we stuck it in the includes directory, which I mentioned was kind of global. So because we know that layouts is an includes, when I mention layouts here, it knows where to get that. So I can go ahead and save this. I'm going to go ahead and go to that page. So that's 2021-01-19 hijacking screen readers with CSS.
I think you might have it in the includes. It might be called layout singular.
Oh, yeah. You're totally right. I'm gonna rename this to layouts plural. I mean, and we can decide as a team what our preference is there. But yeah, okay. So now it's able to pull that event.html. So we had in our in our markdown, we declared this title, we declared this layout, and this is exposed as content.
So can I ask a quick question,
Yeah.
Ben?
What's up?
So in the front matter, layout is a magic word. Seems like content is a magic word for everything not in the front matter. But then title and date, those are just arbitrary fields that we name.
Yeah. And in fact, I'll even rename this event name, and this will break. But we could go back here, and we can call this event name, and it's back. So
Beautiful.
Layout and content are magic reserved words here in this case, but title, event name, whatever you want to call it, is like we get that flexibility. Date operates a weird space where if you have a property called date, Eleventy will help you use that to like sort your posts. So it's also kind of a magic keyword there. Basically, the only totally non-magic keyword we had in our front matter was title. I'm going to go back to calling the title though, just because I think that as a name makes a little more sense to me personally.
Definitely. I assume there are other magic words we'll learn about as we dive into Eleventy, possibly.
Yeah, permalink is one of them. I think there's like pagination and stuff like that. There are other magic words like that you just kind of have to like read through the docs to find out. Okay,
Very cool.
So this is working. I want to show off what happens when I, add some markdown into here. So this is now going to be bolded. Oh, that did work. Weird. Huh. Wait, what happens if I say bold weird? Okay, I guess it works now. It used to be, and you should probably still do this just to be safe. Used to be that it would output your HTML, but like escaped. So that would the user would literally see what looked like your HTML output here. And so you had to add into your layout here. You needed to send the content through what was called the safe filter, and that would take the escaped HTML and convert it to actual HTML that renders the way you would expect. So it's still a best practice to for content, because this is what's here is this is the contents of your markdown, but after it's already gone through the HTML generation. So this is literally a paragraph tag with a bold tag, etc.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think maybe they might have changed these defaults for, you know what it is? It's because we're using Liquid and not Nunjucks. Nunjucks is the one you have to escape it for. See, I'm still learning lots. There's a lot about this I don't know, but
so,
yeah. So we have our
Oh, sorry. I wasn't sure if if you have a next step, we can totally go there. But I was also, I finally, now that I'm in and I got that description for the event added up, just a really quick one. I added a markdown file and then put an author's element in there. And so I wasn't sure if maybe you wanted to pull that out. It's the event 10 for 1222.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Let's do that. Yeah, so we can definitely do this. Yeah. So let's have some fun with this. I'm gonna go back to our event, and what I'm gonna do is I'm going to use. So let's say not every event will have speakers, right? Maybe that's like we want this to be an optional field. So what I'm about to do here is add some stuff into our layout that will only show up if there is a speakers. So I think what I need to do is I have this right here, this syntax. I've got the curly braces with some percent signs. This is an opportunity for an expression, a liquid expression. So I'm going to say if speakers, and then we're going to do some stuff. And I have to close this block. So I'm going to do end if. So everything in here will only get like included in the final build HTML if there was a speakers tag. And in here, I'm going to create an unordered list. And I think this is for speaker in speakers, I think. Similarly, we're going to need to close this out with an end for. And so what this should do, if I'm remembering my liquid correctly, this should say, okay, if we have a speakers variable, then we're going to go ahead and create an unordered list. Inside there, we're going to iterate over that speakers variable, and we're going to assign each element of speakers to a variable called speaker. And then we're going to create a list item with that speaker. We'll see if this works. I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to go to... So we can see that there's no list here, nothing going on there. And I'm going to go to 2012. This is 22 UI reproduction interview challenge. Let's see what. Oh yeah. But this isn't consuming our layout yet. So it's just taking like this file. It's not actually borrowing our layout. It's not using this layouts event HTML. So I'm going to go ahead and give this layout.
Nice.
Layouts event.html. And that actually brings up a good point that I'm going to get to pretty shortly. I'm going to refresh this. So you can see we've got our title as an H1. We have a list with every item in our speakers.
Very
kind of cool.
Yeah, super cool.
So at this point, you'll realize, like, I just forgot a thing for a while, which is that, like, well, all of these markdown files are going to need our layout. And probably, for the most case, most of these events are going to need to use the same layout, right? And so it'd be ridiculously manual to go to each of these markdown files and any markdown files that we create in the future and assign the layout property to them, right? Instead, it would be really nice if we could say, go ahead and apply this property to every markdown file inside schedule. And to do this, we use a tool that Eleventy provides called directory data files. So I'm on the docs here. They've got a page here for template and directory specific data files, and it tells you how you can create this. Basically, there are tons of possible names you could give it. The one that I find that's like easiest to remember is if I want my schedule directory to have a directory data file, I can go to schedule and I can create a new file inside there called schedule.json. So this is the easiest way in my mind to create a directory data file, which is just simply have it be a JSON file with the same name as the directory that it's in. There are tons of other options, and those docs do a great job at explaining them, but I'm just going to go with this. This is the one that's easiest for me. And in here, I can create a new object. I can give it layout, and I'll say that this is layouts event.html. And now this property is assigned to the front matter of every markdown file in this directory. So every schedule / something.md now has layouts event.html. And to prove that, I'm going to go to my 12/21 Eleventy community calendar. You can see that even though we did not call out a layout property here, it is consuming our layout.
This is something is so worth pointing out is that I really like this approach too, because it kind of co-locates it with the directory. Like if you put this in like a global config, it gets kind of like, it feels separated, but having that schedule JSON inside of the schedule directory, like it feels very like tied together, virtuous, kind of at the right level. It's not like leaking out. And I love this about like the Eleventy config. Absolutely.
So we can do tons more with this. The next thing I want to do is I want to have some kind of fancier stuff. Like, so it's no secret that, you know, we're all big fans of React here, right? And React is killer in its component approach of letting us think about just individual chunks of our page in a very modular way, right? And here, our layouts, we're already thinking about things in terms of like, what does the entire page look like? And that is wild, right? That's such a different mindset from like the idea of like a reusable component. So while Eleventy doesn't have components, you can create more HTML files inside of your includes. We usually, by convention, call these partials, and you can consume those partials inside your layout. I'm going to show you a quick example, which is I'm going to create a new folder. Again, we don't need to create a folder for this. This just is, I think, a helpful convention so that we can keep this stuff separate from our layouts. So we know like what constitutes an overall page's information versus what is like a reusable chunk of that page. And in here, I'm going to create header.html. And here, I'll create this. And, you know, maybe inside here, we'll create a nav. It's not going to be the most glorious thing, but a href equals that. There we go. Lunch dev community. Cool. So we've got a little header. And just to kind of show off what it's doing, I'm going to actually add some style to this. I'm going to say that this is background color. Let's go with aquamarine, just for the fun of it. It's not going to be lovely, but it'll be there. I can go back to my event.html, and I want my header to go before my main because I'm a big fan of semantics. So I'm going to go ahead and do another liquid expression here. That's the percents inside of the braces. And here I'm going to say include partials / header.html. Again, the reason we're able to just say partials is because partials is contained within our includes. So it's like exposed at the global level for our layouts to consume. So I'm saving this, and now you can see it's atrocious looking, but we have a header there. If we create other pages, which we likely will, if we create other layouts, we can go ahead and reuse that header. And that means we have now like a global nav that we can just change in one place it'll update across any of the layouts that consume that, which is pretty neat. Also, while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and no longer call this title, no longer call this document. I'm going to go ahead and pull in the page title, and I'll add in a lunch dev community calendar. And that way we have a nice, helpful document title, which, in addition to being just a nice thing to do, is also important for accessibility. That's a big part of what gets announced every time you navigate to a new page when you're not in a single page application ecosystem. So we now have a helpful title for our tab, and that title is being generated by our front matter. Do we have any questions about any of this so far?
I don't think so. This all looks cool. It's fun to see how like you're just using the .html extension, but it's obviously interpreting it as, I assume, like mustache templates or handlebars or something like that.
It's Liquid right now.
Oh, Liquid. Yeah, right. Liquid, which is cool. I like that.
For sure. I know a lot of people in the Eleventy community also prefer nunjucks. I think it has like extra capabilities. I don't know enough to say one way or another. So at least for the purposes of today, I'm not trying to introduce any extra configurations that I don't know enough about. So we're sticking with Liquid for now. As this project grows, we may come to have an opinion about it, but I don't have an opinion about it right now. Cool.
The cool thing too is that like all of the templating stuff is just in these two files right now. So it would be easy enough to change them because it's not strewn all over the application yet, which is pretty cool.
For sure. All right. So next thing, I think it's a problem that we don't have a homepage. In fact, that was like the one mock-up I sort of created, right? Was to have a bit of a homepage. And already causing chaos on the mock-up. And I think anyone who's like who's been playing around on their local host and trying to go to all the different pages will know that like these slugs, these URLs are incredibly long and finicky. No one's going to just like manually type these things up. We need a landing page that links people out to the other pages. So that's what I want to work on next. But before I do, I'm actually going to commit this. Because that's a thing we can do. Git add. There we go. Got that committed. Now I'm going back here where we've got Node running. Cool. So I want to create a homepage. I want this to exist at /. And the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to remember that Eleventy right now is looking for all of our markdown files inside source. So source is treated like root as far as Eleventy is concerned right now. So if I want a homepage that exists at /, then I want it to be at my root. I'm going to call this index.md. And the reason I'm calling it that is because afterwards, and I mean, Eleventy's already done it because Eleventy's already running. Eleventy takes my file name and changes it from an MD to an HTML. And index.html is like browsers use that as like, oh, hey, we don't actually need to show the index.html, which is what gives the like illusion basically of us being at root. So I called it index.md and it got turned to index.html, which in turn gets turned into my root here. So you can see I now have like nothing here.
Hey Ben, would you mind?
We're not actually going to have a whole lot here. I'm going to create some front matter space. And basically the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to point this to a layout that I'm creating I'm going to call this like homepage.html.
Hey Ben, real quick, would you mind killing your screen share and then starting it up again? I think we're getting that same kind of blocking thing. Or yeah.
screens, screen 2. Go live. Okay.
Actually, it was interesting. It seemed to fix itself as soon as you as soon as enough pixels changed. It was like you closed the sidebar or something like that, and then it kind of fixed itself, which was interesting.
Interesting. Okay. Good to know. So I'm gonna point this to homepage.html. And in here, gonna go ahead, spin up our template here. Undev community calendar. And at this point, I don't want to do too much fancy stuff right now. I'll add a main, and I'll add, my H1, and I'm going to call this Undev community calendar. So maybe I could have done this as like a title or something, but there we go. So we now have ourselves a lovely page. For now, just starting simple, I want to get an unordered list of links to all the different events that we've got going on. And here's kind of where we freeze for a moment, right? Because we've created pages for markdown files that already existed, right? Where it was basically this translation of we have this markdown file and we chuck it through a layout that we created, and at the other side we have an HTML file that included all of our awesome data, thanks to the variables that we were able to pluck from that kind of global scope. But here, we kind of have to ask ourselves, how are we going to get access to all the different events in this file? How do we get that? I'm not able to come up with I can't do title. This isn't going to work, I don't think. Yeah, we don't have title. We need to get a list of our events. And Eleventy exposes this functionality through what it calls collections. And we can create collections of our own. So the way that we can do this is we can go back to our Eleventy.js that's at our root. All right, and here's where, once again, you just kind of need to know things about the Eleventy configuration object here. And to do that, you would go to the Eleventy docs, to the configuration page, and you could look at all the different things you can do. We're curious about where it says this add custom collections. If I click this link, it's going to jump me further down on this docs page to the collections. Oh, no, it's going to take me to its own page. Cool. All right. There's. Could have sworn there was more stuff in here for this. Okay, cool. Yeah. So to use Eleventy config, we can, or to add a collection, we can use our Eleventy config, and it has a method called add collection. It requires a collection name, and then it's going to take a function. That function is basically going to receive all the markdown files across the entire project. And we want to filter those markdown files to a list that's just our events, because likely down the road we will want other markdown files to be an about us page or something like that, right? Or even we've got this index.md. We don't want to pick those up. The only ones we want to pick up are our events, which are in source/schedule. So we can basically, in this function, we need to filter down to just the markdown files that we care about, and we return that. And Eleventy goes, okay, so you've got these markdown files. I'm going to go ahead and create a collection with this name that you've given me, and I'll expose that collection for you globally in the data cascade.
So this is a way, if I understand it correctly, of making your own special words in Eleventy. We had talked about how title is kind of a special word, and date and whatnot. This is allowing you to define what you special words for yourself to use in your templates.
I mean, the way to define special words like that would be to use front matter or the directory data files and stuff like that, or the data directory.
Okay.
That's not so much what we're doing. Instead, we're saying, Eleventy, you are processing a lot of documents. I want you to take this subset of documents and expose it to me in a way that I can iterate over in my layouts.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Bit of a different thing.
Yep. Totally.
Great question, though. So let's go ahead and do this. Eleventy configuration dot add collection. We can call this collection absolutely whatever we want, but I'm going to call it events. And in here, we're going to take a function and we're going to return something. And the way I usually do this is actually with globs. This is, and this is just something that I've got from like a bit of experience of a few months with Eleventy, is like, this is just the way I prefer to do it, because usually I've organized my directory structures like in very much so like a segmented way of like everything that's in this folder is this specific concern. And that makes globs a really convenient way to think about the collections that I'm building. So yeah, I'm going to go into this function and I'm going to return Eleventy configuration dot get filtered by glob. And in here, I'm going to pass this source slash schedule slash star.md. So this is going to get me every markdown file that is at the top level of my schedule directory. So if I had a folder inside here that had its own markdown file, it wouldn't get that. We would maybe want to like be a little more generous with our globbing. Like, I think you could do like this or something, but for now, let's just say we're keeping things simple. We're going to keep things just like flat inside schedule. And we can revisit that. What's up?
Generous globbing would be a good, I don't know, like streamer name or or like channel or something like that.
Yeah, generous globbing is semantics after dark.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah, what we're seeing here is a pretty idiomatic, like, Eleventy way of going about things. But basically, we're saying, hey, take all the markdown files that exist within source/schedule and create just basically a list of them that is called events that I can iterate over inside my layouts. So we've created this now, and every time you change something in your Eleventy JS file, you generally want to go ahead and restart your dev server, because I find that usually those changes don't tend to be picked up. It tends to be a little hit or miss in that case. So I've just restarted my Eleventy dev server in the terminal down below. So now that we've got this collection like inside Eleventy as part of the Cascade for us to use, we want to go ahead and actually use it. So to do this, I'm going to go back to our homepage, and I'm going to go ahead and create us an unordered list. And in here, I want to iterate over my collection. So for event in collections dot event, events. So collections here, like this is our global variable. Here's the collection name that we just gave it. And as we iterate, we assign each item to event. So that's kind of the flow so far. And we'll start off with not even doing anything dynamic in here. Just I'm just going to say hello. I'm going to save this. We're going to get an error. Why are we get filtered by glob is not a function? Hang on. Debugging time. That is because it's not Eleventy config. It's collection API, which is given to us here. So collection API collection API. Sorry, I think I changed that really quickly. I don't know if everyone followed, but basically, when we create a function, when we create a collection, we have to pass it a function. That function receives as a parameter basically a magical object given to it by Eleventy, and it has a method called getFilteredByCloud. And so this collection API parameter that it receives, this is basically our interface for doing anything cool with collections, with any sort of like processing of like, oh, we know that this markdown file exists in Eleventy. We use this interface here. So notice that in here, in our schedule directory, we have 5 markdown files. And our unordered list currently has 5 items in it. So it's successfully getting all of the markdown files inside of our schedule directory. And for each one, it's creating its own bullet. Any questions so far?
Mm-mm.
Cool.
Good for my end.
Awesome. So we want to get some information about these events so that we can know what to do with this. And I think, I could be wrong here, but I think we can do, event pipe log. So whenever you see a pipe like this is basically denoting like, hey, we're about to do a function. There's a function. We call these functions filters in Eleventy land, but basically log is a filter. It's a function. And when we write this out like this, basically it's going to call log and it's going to pass it whatever the left-hand side of the pipe is. So it's calling log, passing an event. And I'm going to save this. And I think, yeah, look at that. If you check our console here, we just output a whole bunch of data. And this is all the data that exists for this this one event, or rather for every event that gets logged out. So you can see, like, here's one object. It has this like template object. This is, all the stuff that's given to us from the Eleventy config, right? We can start to see like, oh, it's got like the input directory with source, right? Stuff like that.
That is so cool.
There's, we got more stuff. We've got this like file slug thing, which is pretty cool. That's down here. So that'll give us like, hey, what was the slug of our markdown file? We've got other stuff. There's tons of information. So if you're ever curious about like, hey, what are the actual contents of this variable that I've been given? Super helpful to pipe it through to the log filter. It'll just output everything. It's great. There's a front matter property here, and you can see that like, oh, we've got like some content. We've got data. There's this data object that's going to be helpful for us pretty shortly. And actually, I think there's going to be here's what we want. Our event has a data property, and this has so much, y'all. Like, it has, look at this. It's got title that we defined in our front matter. So it seems like, and here's our date. So anything that we put in our front matter is now exposed in this event's data property. So we could access it with event.data.whatever. So if we wanted to get our title, we could say event.data.title. There's also, I want to draw your attention to this property down here. So this would be event.url, and this will give you the actual URL that this file is getting output to. So we're going to use this. We're going to use both of these things. So I'm going to say here, we've got our list item. And I'm going to say inside here, we're going to have an anchor tag with an href, and that href, I'm going to pass it event.url, which is that property that we saw down below. So here we're just injecting that URL into this href attribute. And I want to pass a helpful title here. So I want to get the title from the event's front matter. So that's going to be event.data.title. Remembering that event.data is basically our way to hook into this markdown file's front matter. So if I save this, we're going to see that we now have one of these, I know which one. So one of these markdown files does not have a title, which is why we've got this weird rendering. But for any one of these that does have a title, you can see that we're now outputting it. And if I click it, you'll see it's a link directly to that page. Catch you later, Chantastic. In just a few moments, I guess. So yeah, now we've been able to dynamically generate links to all of our events. We can see that one of these isn't working, and that's because it's Michael's.
No, of course.
For sure. Title. Gonna call this. There we go. Cool. Any questions about that? Because I know that was a lot. We just skipped straight over like a whole bunch of the like just data cascade and stuff like that. But like we're able to source information and combine it in this way so that we can now dynamically output this stuff.
It makes sense for the most part. I was going to ask, I guess you could see if this is a super quick question or if this is going down a different rabbit hole. I guess we can save this for later. But for emoji support, like adding like in Markdown, like adding plugins to Markdown, how easy or difficult is that? Is that just a matter of adding a plugin, or is there manual work behind that?
It kind of depends on how novel your idea is for the Markdown. Eleventy behind the scenes uses a Markdown parser called MarkdownIt. I'll type this in the chat, or I'll put this in the chat. But MarkdownIt has a lot of plugins, and it makes it really easy to use some of these plugins. If we wanted to customize it for our own needs, we totally can. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's find ourselves a helpful. In fact, I'm going to go here and I'm going to Google like MarkdownIt emojis, and you can see like it looks like there is a plugin called MarkdownIt emoji. It's even by this guy is the creator or lead contributor to MarkdownIt. So this is an official MarkdownIt plugin. But yeah, we can go ahead and use this. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's customize our Markdown so we can use this. So I'm gonna kill the dev server. I'm gonna yarn add MarkdownIt and MarkdownIt emoji. So I'm installing both of these dependencies. There we go. We can see that these dependencies have landed in our package JSON. I'm going to go to the Eleventy.js. And in here, I'm going to const MarkdownIt equals require MarkdownIt const emoji equals require. Oops, there we go. MarkdownIt emoji. And the next thing that I'm going to do is let Markdown equals, and I'm kind of like half following this stuff here in the docs, but mostly I've just kind of done stuff like this before. We're going to construct a MarkdownIt object. There's some configurations you could pass here, like for instance, if you wanted it to format quotes to where they're like angled instead of like straight quotes, you could use their typographer true. We'll go ahead and add that in there. That way we can kind of play with it. And then we can say markdown.use. And I'm getting that from in here. It's saying like, hey, we declare and instantiate our markdown. We can now pass it emoji. And then as far as Eleventy is concerned, all we need to do is tell it, hey, I know you've been using your own default like built-in instance of MarkdownIt to parse the markdown. But instead, I want you to use like my own configured Markdown it instance. So I'm going to tell it set library. We want it to go for all files with the Markdown type, Markdown language. I'm going to pass it Markdown. Now I've done that, I can go ahead and spin up my dev server again. We'll see if this works. I've not used Markdown it emoji specifically, so we'll see. Look at that.
Nice.
There are tons of plugins there for the using. Truthfully, I think a community calendar project like this probably isn't going to require some super in-depth Markdown customization. But on my blog, I customize the hell out of Markdown it. And the reason for that is because Markdown is absolutely terrible at specifying things like aside or other like landmark elements. It just Markdown isn't meant for that. It's not meant to author HTML like that, even though that's how we use it. And so I've like created a whole bunch of like custom Markdown it plugins for my own site that like handles like very specific Markdown and like outputs a specific result. So that way I'm able to use asides and figures and stuff like that a little more easily. So yeah, the fact that this is as configurable as it is incredible. I love it.
Yeah, that's cool. I love this. I have a question about Markdown it specifically. Obviously, there's like so many Markdown parsers, and so I'm kind of curious if you know. Oops, I just want to put my face up. I was just curious, like if you know some of like the differences between Markdown it and other Markdown things, or if it just doesn't matter, if this is kind of like in the Netlify community, this is kind of the one that they've all rallied around, and so there's not really much of a point in kind of going against convention.
I'm not super familiar. I know basically like every static site generator kind of comes with its own opinion on these matters, and a lot of them kind of land on Remark. I know Gatsby lands on Remark. I don't super know. I think Markdown it generally like exposes more of its internals for configuration.
Cool.
And so that's maybe why Eleventy landed on it as its like default recommendation. But the other thing is, truthfully, I struggle a lot with Markdown its documentation. I think it's not particularly well documented for consumers or people who would want to author plugins. I think its documentation is very much so written for basically the small handful of people who contribute to Markdown it proper. And I've also struggled with the lead contributor, actually. I don't think they've done a great job at being super welcoming to people coming by and asking questions about like how to use or configure it. So those are some things I personally struggle with on that front. But you can basically bodge your way to anything with Markdown it if you hack around with it after enough time.
That makes sense.
That's kind of my impression.
And to be clear, it looks like if you had wanted to, you could use another configurable Markdown processor in this. It seems like there's not really a tie-in except for the fact that you're it has to be something in like some kind of node package that's configurable effectively, right? Basically,
yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, as far as I know, like there may be some edge cases if you try to use something that's not Markdown it, like if you try to pull in Remark. But I think you totally could pull in Remark if you wanted.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Yeah, and I don't know that I didn't mean to lead anything with that question.
No, that's fine.
I was just kind of curious because it just seems like there's so many, and it seems like each community has the one that they prefer, and I wasn't sure.
For sure. I think this is a great question. Okay, so I don't know how much longer y'all want to go with this. I don't think we're going to make anything particularly pretty, but the thing I was going to propose, if you wanted to spend some time with it, is like if we look back at the basic comps, you can see that I've actually got this like grouped into like three sections of like there's like the whatever the next event is, whatever the remaining like upcoming events are in the past events. And while I don't think we're going to be able to do any like fancy formatting, like I think it could be fun to just play around with like how would we actually segment these out into these 3 sections, get like maybe 3 different lists onto the page.
Yeah, I'd love to like hit that up before we close. And obviously, you know, no one's obligated to stay if you have other things to do. And hopefully you've been able to kind of balance some of that. But I'm curious, like, I naturally lean towards like kind of segmenting them by like if it's today's date or not. And so I'm kind of curious how you land on that.
That's basically what I was thinking, right? Is like, because and again, like with Eleventy, right? Like you're just delivering HTML. The only JavaScript that gets served is like the JavaScript that you write in your Markdown or in your layouts, right? Or in your partials. So basically, you decide what JavaScript gets served. That means that like, if you want to do anything dynamic, you either have to serve some JavaScript to do that, and that JavaScript is going to do like good old-fashioned DOM manipulation, or you have to do your dynamic stuff at build time, so that like you're still serving up a JavaScript-less static page, but you're letting the build step handle all the fancy stuff. And my thought was like, oh, go ahead, Jen. Looks like you've got thoughts.
Oh, me? Sorry. Oh, no. No. You're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looked like you were coming off mute a couple times, so I just wanted to give you a chance. So my thought was, I don't think it really truly needs to serve up any JavaScript to the end user. My thought was like we could have this like hosted on GitHub and use GitHub Actions to trigger like a Netlify build every night at like midnight. And so the most up to date it would need to be is like today, right? So like if even after whatever we do today, assuming there's only like one event today, even after that's done, it'll still show up as like up next until like the end of the day when it does its nightly build, and then it like shunts today's stuff to like the past list. So that's kind of what I've been thinking. Like those were the 2 approaches. And one of those approaches lets me do a lot more stuff ahead of time for the user instead of serving up JavaScript to have the user's computer do it for me.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it'd be cool to see how that all integrates to the notion of just like a daily build makes a lot of sense, and having it all be configurable by date instead of having, you know, I think you mentioned this at the beginning, you know, as opposed to having someone have to maintain it. And kind of, you know, redeploy it on update. This definitely makes a lot of sense.
Cool. All right. So in that case, we're going to want to figure out how to do upcoming events, and we're going to want to figure out how to do past events. And I have my own thoughts on this matter, but I'm kind of curious based on what y'all have seen, like what y'all are thinking about this.
So for the content itself, is it, so if you say you just wanted to like add a event that, you know, is upcoming, or so is it just you go in, you pull the GitHub branch, you kind of just do everything manually through the MD files?
Yeah. So my thought was like contributors down the road, like when you want to add an event, when everything's kind of all set up and automated, the workflow would be just basically you go to the schedule directory, you create a new Markdown file, you commit it, we merge it in, right? I don't want them to have to worry about anything. I don't want them to really have to worry about like upkeep or anything like that. So that would be the flow. So ideally, we should already have all the information we need in the Markdown file to start with, and not have to think about it ever again after the event. Or if we are thinking about it, it's because we're adding like a link to the video or something like that, or a video embed. Yeah, that was in my mind what the flow would be for that.
Yeah, okay. And then I think that would be a pretty simple flow. And plus it kind of, you know, for people in here who have less experience with open source, it kind of can get them through the full flow of, you know, contributing to open source and getting onboarded into something. And so if we kind of, you know, just very, you know, spell it out how to do it and kind of what is expected.
Yeah.
Do you think it'll be as simple for like, the main thing I'm not a designer. And so the number one thing I run into the most often is like, I need a good image. Like, where can I get a good image? Like, can somebody from marketing send me one? Like, I don't know where it is. Is it going to be just as simple as, like kind of like Chan mentioned, like in the MD file, there'll be somewhere where you just specify a URL and then it's just going to do everything for you. It's just, it's like a recommended size.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought here. And actually what I was thinking for like this layout here is, while it's got like a rectangular shape, like I'm seeing this as more of like a container where we could put in some information. Like this could have like inside it in like really big text. Like it could have, for instance, okay, well, like I'm not really, okay, actually, here we go. So I could have like hijacking screen readers with CSS, have that be like really big.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's like I had naturally gone to thinking of these as images, but these really can just be text.
Yeah,
with like a shared background image or something.
Yeah, there could be a background image. Oftentimes, I imagine sessions like these will usually deal with like some technology. So we could have like a logo for that technology in here somewhere. We could style it, right? Mostly, what I wanted to get through today is not even necessarily like creating these cards, but even just like separating these out into 3 sections in general, right? And we could start with like 3 unordered lists.
Yeah, I think so. So the sections would be effectively, in terms of time, it's going to be anything that is like before today, anything that's after today, and then there's going to be like this concept of like nearest to today in the future.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Okay, yeah, that's actually super. I didn't even think about that. Like, so there's going to be a way where we just put in the date and it just kind of figures it out. We don't have to touch it at all.
Yeah, and that's actually what I'm trying to get at, right? Is like,
okay,
we put in the date and it just thinks about it, right? So everything is either before today. That's like the past events, right? Past events are before today. Then there's upcoming events, which is anything that's today or after today. Is kind of my thought. And we could, so basically my thinking is if we can segment out into those 2 categories, right? Past events and upcoming events, then we could pluck the first item from the upcoming events and have that be like our featured, like up next item.
Yeah, I like that.
Cool. So there are several different ways we can do this, some of which use tools that we've already kind of covered, like in this session, that we could continue to use, not introduce a whole bunch of like extra like APIs and that kind of stuff. One idea that we could do is we could create a collection for upcoming events and create another collection for past events. And that way we could continue working with these just as though they're like any other collection.
Oh yeah, I like that. So you would have a dedicated collection for okay, interesting. So yeah, because I think naturally I was going to put this in the template, but you'd have to repeat that everywhere that you were going to do that. So adding these as collections allows you to kind of, if at any point you wanted to have another thing that's like counts the upcoming events and it has all of that data available to it via like the named collection of like past events or something like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Cool. Let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to create this and let's go ahead and do this as past events. And to be able to get my past events, I'm going to need to do some date processing. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and add date functions as a dependency. And
what's up, Anthony?
Date functions. Anthony, hello.
What's up, guys?
Good to see you.
Hey, long time no see, dude.
Yeah, I did. I just popped in the Discord. I was like, oh wow, these guys are on camera right now. Shit, I gotta say hey.
Yeah,
It has been a while.
We've been playing around with Eleventy. Actually, y'all want to go ahead and say what we've been doing?
Yeah, Ben's
I thought we're just going to kind of breeze over some things, and we're going into the weeds. I'm like learning a ton. My main things was like the kind of component side of it, and I was wondering how easy it was to just like throw in emoji support, and we're just like we're flying through it. So I feel like I'm even getting pinged on the side from work, but I don't even want to like. I'm kind of like making them wait because I feel like I'm gonna miss something.
Oh man.
Yeah, I love it. I don't want to say that I over or underestimated Ben's knowledge of Eleventy, but it's very I'm very impressed with how readily available all of these APIs are in his memory.
The trick is to put together a proof of concept the morning before you commit to putting it on for everyone else.
That's what I do for all my talks. I do a whole run through, create the project, and then create a script of myself creating the project, and then I build the project a second time during the meetup and follow the script I created for myself the first time.
So good.
Love it.
Yeah. So what we've been building out, and I mean it's a gorgeous site right now, but oh god, it's not even up right now. What we have been building out is basically a community calendar where you could go see kind of what events have already happened and maybe go back and look at some of the videos, or you could see what events are upcoming. So
that's so funny. This is the exact problem David is having right now in Redwood is managing meetups.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So right now we've been able to aggregate all of our markdown files and create basically a list of links to go to each of those pages, but we want to segment them out into, events that have already happened and events that are upcoming, and we want to feature the most, the next event, right? The soonest event. We want to feature that more prominently in its own list. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of playing around with Eleventy's what it calls the data cascade for managing that. Anthony, how familiar are you with Eleventy? Have you played with it before?
So I've just built out that small little proof of concept blog that I did a week or two ago. That's what got us into that first conversation about a lot of stuff. And because I've definitely heard about it. It's been in the back of my mind for a while as kind of the current most used static site generator that is just a static site generator. It's not trying to be this whole big thing that's so Gatsby is no, we don't want to be just a static site generator, whereas I find Eleventy is cool because it's leaning into that and it's making that its core kind of strength and competency. And I love static site generators, and I like having just a quick and easy way to work with Markdown and that kind of stuff. So it's super appealing to me for a lot of those reasons. And then obviously we've been talking about accessibility and stuff like that. And I know that's something it highly values and something that I know I personally have very little knowledge in.
Well, good deal. Cool. Yeah. So let's go ahead and work on getting this collection up and going. So we need to we want to take our collection, basically get the same kind of collection we were getting for our events, but we want to filter it down even further so that it's only including events from before today. So I'm going to break this out into multiple lines.
Just a quick question. So I know what Markdown it is, and below that, is that just another plugin for doing emojis with Markdown it?
Yeah, that was kind of a question that Michael G had, was how easy is it to configure the Markdown support to add support for things like emojis? And it turns out pretty dang easy.
When I did learn with Jason, and I was showing him Redwood, when he got to the input part, with the whole form builder, he's like, oh, let me test this. And the way he tested it was by giving it an emoji. And I thought that was really interesting, is that's a good way to kind of test a system, because all of us have emojis in most of the things we're using, Twitter and Discord and all that kind of stuff. We can kind of copy paste emojis all around, but a website can't necessarily do that unless it's you thought about
Emojis
that.
are no longer an edge case; they're just reality.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting.
So, yeah, cool. Let's go ahead and do this filtering. So, God, I know I've already done this filtering for a proof of concept, but I'm gonna actually not look back on notes or anything. I'm gonna check the docs.
Ooh.
Oh God, maybe I shouldn't search for filter. That will get me everything.
Ben, I'm also going to have to leave in just, I don't know, maybe like 6 minutes or so to head off to a meeting.
Cool.
Just giving you a heads up, because as soon as I leave, the recording stops. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is going to take that much longer. I think we've got pretty much it all there.
Oh yeah, I think we can get it. I have full confidence in you.
So this looks promising to me. Notice how it's got like this example of a filter. It receives, you give it a function. That function receives like an item, and here we can see we've got this like dot data, which we've seen in the past as like this is our way of like hooking into front matter. So this seems really promising because we're already like storing our date in the front matter. So I'm gonna go ahead. Oh God, fun. So I'm gonna go ahead and tack on a filter. We're gonna say that this is event, and I specifically want. I installed date functions so that I could pull in is after and is before. Where
Also, talking about points in time as like after and before is so confusing. Like I'm not really sure. Like if I had to guess which one was which. Right? Like,
oh yeah,
before and after both sound like things that are in the past. When related to like a date in time, right?
For sure. All right. So here I'm now gonna say
I get what you mean.
we're gonna say that we're basically checking whether new date, give it event data.date comes before new date, and that's just going to be today. That should work. So we're receiving all of our markdown files that are inside schedule, then we're filtering those for just the ones where the provided date comes before today's dates.
So success for this would be that like our event for tomorrow, the UI reproduction interview challenge, should disappear, right?
Well, yeah. I think you're right on that. Yes. So let's go ahead and on our homepage, we're gonna say that this is past events. We'll test that out. Test out your theory. Yeah. And this one is showing up as, even though this one has today, the new time, the timestamp it came up with was after midnight because it's today, like it's right now it's timestamp. So we'd probably have to play around with it. There's probably like more specific things you can do with date functions to like not include today or something like that. But we have options.
Gotcha. Yeah, that is always kind of a funny thing in developing these, is working with like when is today. Like in these static site generators, it can be a little bit confused. I'm pretty sure I've had to like toggle some APIs on defining that as well.
For today?
There's a guy in the Redwood community who really loves date FNs. He's always recommending it.
Well, my frustrating thing, the thing that frustrates me is like Google always takes me to the old docs.
Mm. Yeah, it's gonna be a problem with Vue for a while. Vue's docs are split right now between 2 and 3.
Like you always have to just like manually go. Okay. Anyways, we'll play around with this a little more, but upcoming events is gonna work the same way. So this is upcoming and we would expect this to be is after. Oh, sorry, down. Is after. So we should now have probably, I would think, 2 lists. Why?
Did you add it to your template already? I might have missed that.
I feel like I might have. I probably didn't. Oh, this is the wrong template.
I see a white circle. Maybe you need to save it again.
Oh, yes. Nailed it. There we go. So now we've got 2 lists, and the one edge case is like today's thing. Actually, there's 2 edge cases because no, it's just the one edge case. Never mind. Yeah. So that is we're getting somewhere, right? Like we definitely don't have like a big like fancy splash page that we could point people to, but we have definitely the makings of an application that we could build onto. And I know you're about to go, Chan, but kind of my thought for this is I can open this up as a GitHub repo. We can continue building on this in future sessions. And also I might raise like a few issues on that GitHub in case anyone wants to like take them on and try those themselves.
Yeah, I love this. And I'm so like just overwhelmed and grateful that you like took this on because it's so exciting to see it already like take so much shape. Like, I mean, like ship it. Like this is
really cool.
Yeah, super cool to see, and like having it just be like markdown files is like so it's very friendly to contribute to. It's very clear from the like looking at the schedule thing, it's very clear from the outside like how to interpret this, how to interpret the dates, like all this kind of stuff. So it's really really cool to see. So yeah, I'm just grateful that you did all this and then ran through it with us. It's just so fun to experience.
Absolutely.